I'm back with another one of my videos I have to record today. This time I want to look at this one. I thought about doing some more Fox News videos. Maybe I'll record that in a little bit, but I want to watch this video. Why we are the weakest generation of all time. This video is about a month old, but it looks interesting, seems interesting, has pretty good amount of views, has almost 1 million views and almost 100k thumbs up, so it should be a great video. I should learn a lot, hopefully, and hopefully I don't have any problems with this video. I shouldn't. Got a pretty good like ratio, should be good to go.
Quote by an author named Michael Hoff, and it goes something like this: hard times make strong men. Strong men create good times. Good times create weak men, and weak men create hard times. And you can really see this idea rolling through the ages, and that wheel of history turning is just soaked blood red by not understanding that hard times means lots of people die, tyrants rise up and rule. And so this is a really painful lesson that we have to keep learning over and over. And I wonder, if we become even weaker, let's imagine for a moment that we are the weakest generation right now that has ever walked the face of the planet. I actually believe that. I think we're the weakest people that have ever walked on planet.
Yo, the U.S. military, if you drop the U.S. military back in I don't know, like the 1400s, no diff, whole planet gone. What do you mean we're the weakest? We are definitely the strongest. We are the closest to going to other planets. We're closer to achieving technology that would make our lives significantly better in so many different ways. How could we possibly be the weakest? Maybe maybe the average person is in slightly worse physical shape. But also, even today, we have the strongest athletes we've ever been able to produce because of our innovations in science and technology. And because of our apparent weakness, we now have the greatest athletes that we've ever had. That's why we are continually able to break world records for things like marathons that we've been running for centuries, or not necessarily just specifically marathons, but different sporting events that we've been doing for many years. We are consistently able to break a lot of different records because technology is better, our equipment is better, our understanding of the human physiology is better, our diets can be significantly better. We can look at our diets on a micronutritional level and scientifically figure out what the optimal diet for each individual is. We have all of the potential, and I kind of see what he's saying in the sense that there are a lot of people who aren't doing all those things, me included, but he probably also isn't. And on top of that, who cares? I think people having more general freedom is significantly better than trying to force us to live in hard times.
Earth before. And I wonder, and I'm gonna back that up in just a moment here. But I wonder, the weaker the person, the worse the times to come are. Probably so. Anyway, here's kind of the way I want to break this up. I have 4 major points. Here they are. 1.
I wonder what kind of level he's talking about. Is he talking about on an Earth-wide level? Are the weakest generations just a United States focused thing? I'm just really curious what his perspective is on that.
We are all little kings. That's going to be fun. 2, courage has died and we do not mourn her. 3, we are chocolate soldiers. And 4, it's all your fault. So I want to go through these 4 pieces to really just try to step back and look at our times as they are and see where we are.
I feel like you just put together, I feel like that quote's just a bunch of nonsense. And then it just sounds really profound because of the way it's phrased.
Are in that wheel of history, so we might understand that when
for some reason I feel like the
times,
idea behind that isn't going to be very good. I have a small feeling about that,
which are just around the corner, happen. We understand where it's coming from and what it requires to get out of that business. All right, so the first point: we're all little kings. And what I mean by that, my wife and I were over in London. We saw the Tower of London where all these different kings lived. You can also imagine emperors over the time period, but they're still like going to the bathroom and pots and, low age expectancy and no real medical treatment. And they're sweating it out in the summers and freezing in the winters. And
What's funny is our life expectancy hasn't actually increased all that much if you look at people past the age of, I think, like 5. Like, even back when he's talking about, if you made it past 5, you had a pretty good chance to live like 60, 70. But the reason why the average life expectancy was so low is because infant mortality rates were so high. That's why things like just modern birth giving techniques and all the medicine that goes towards that and helping reduce infant mortality, but also a lot of things like pasteurization to help make food and water cleaner for infants to consume, because they were the ones who were most susceptible to those diseases that they would catch. So once you made it past 5, even back when he was talking about, you likely had the exact same life expectancy as we do today. Not exactly, but pretty close.
They don't have ibuprofen or Benadryl or any of the modern kind of creature comforts. And so today, even our lowest socioeconomic class in the United States, we live in greater comfort and luxury than any of the emperors of old. We're going to step into our vehicle, which can transport us,
Yeah, bro, but also he's talking, I'm sure there are plenty of people, especially who are very poor, who maybe are single parent households, whose lives are significantly harder than those back then. It's just different hardships. Instead of the hardship having to be like, oh, am I going to have clean water today? Instead, it's, oh, am I going to be able to work both my jobs to be able to put food on the table for my family? It's just different hardships. Parts of our lives get easier, but that also comes that the hardships are just now different.
80 miles an hour somewhere else, journeys that would have taken months and you might have died at, is now just kind of a casual day trip where we can artificially control the environment to 71 degrees with perfect lumbar support, as we're just being able to drive to an airport and then be flown to any place in the world while we sit in a seat. Fly.
Yeah, sure, dude. Some people have access to that kind of comfort, but even back when he was talking about, certain people had access to comfort that was far surpassed that of the average human living then. And that what he's talking about is past what a lot of people can realistically afford. Like, most people can't just go wherever they want. There are a lot of people who don't have cars. And even if they do, there are a lot of people who drive just absolute beaters because it's all that they can afford on their minimum wage job. Like, even people that I know who work 45 plus hours a week still barely make ends meet because, like, living expenses are so high. Again, this is just showing a lot of privilege that he's coming from. Today, he gets to experience a lot of these comforts because he comes from a position of privilege. But there are so many people who don't today, and that don't get to experience the comforts that he's talking about of modern society. Yes, they do experience some of them, but it's still, life is very difficult for a lot of people, especially if you take your scope outside of the United States and start looking at poorer countries that have been ravaged by capitalism. These countries have been destroyed economically for their natural resources so that people over here in the United States could gain wealth, and now entire swaths of people are having to deal with the massive amounts of poverty that they now face because their resources and labor has been exploited. Again, like, he's talking about such a select few people. On the grand scale of Earth, he's talking about such a select few number of people, and it's just really highlights the privilege that he comes from, saying that this is the weakest generation. He might be part of our generation, or of, I mean, this dude looks like he could be my dad, but he looks like a part of a generation that had a ton of comfort because he grew up in privilege. And yeah, he probably did. And okay, cool, bro. I'm glad you got to experience that. Good for you, I guess. But that's not everyone's story.
Flying through the sky. That's pretty amazing. And people serve us stuff, and we're able to have ice in all of our drinks on demand. I've got a refrigerator just stacked with food, and a freezer right there. Just all this food ready. We don't have to go gather or hunt at each meal.
Yeah, but you don't have to. But there are now people who have to go and make sure that they are working their butts off every single day to make sure that there's enough money for them to put food on the table. Most people, there are a ton of people who don't have the luxury to have full fridges. There are a ton of people who don't even have the luxury to have access to those kinds of resources because they live in food deserts. That is a big issue, especially in inner cities in the United States, where poor communities aren't able to have even access to nice groceries. And instead, they have to then just, their only options are like fast food and like shitty food. It's terrible. And he's just talking about this from such a position of privilege.
This is incredible. We got a 60-inch TV on the wall. I've got a 50-inch TV on the wall, but still, a 50-inch TV there on the wall. And I'm sitting in my house eating a snack with a perfectly controlled artificial environment around me. I could be even having ice cream, something an emperor in the middle. No one's getting ice cream. Are you kidding me? And when I'm done, I'm going to go take a completely on.
When was ice cream invented? (200 BC). Check and mate, bro. We've been having ice cream for a long ass time, bro. Dude, that looks like the name of an emperor to me. That looks like the name of an emperor to me. Check and mate, brother. Get fucked.
On-demand hot shower. Then I can stream hours and hours of the most amazing content from any type of age or genre. Holy smokes, we could entertain ourselves today. And then you can make a complete living with just typing away from your couch. You make a living, right? You can order groceries that are delivered to your door. You see? I mean, like, yeah, it's true. You don't wield supreme executive authority by any means, but holy cow, the amount of comfort and luxury and entertainment, even our lowest socioeconomic class entertains to this day, is far, far more extravagant than a lot of the emperors of old. Now, this isn't necessarily a bad
Literally
thing. It
just
just
not
means the more coddled we are, the more we're able to distance ourselves from suffering. Even some type of medical thing of like, oh, I don't want to feel that. And they have local or general anesthetic. If like it looks like too much pain, I'm like, just put me out and do the thing. It's like, wow, doctors aren't even bleeding us with leeches anymore, right? If like, holy smokes, we can almost distance ourselves from almost all physical pain if we wanted to and sit in absolute comfort every moment until we die. That's pretty remarkable. But what that means is one day when the hot water is out, we have to join what everybody did for thousands of years and just like take a cold bath, if you even get a bath kind of thing. Most of us can't even wrap our heads around that. And what that means is we're just coddled, we're fragile, we're spoiled, we're high maintenance. I'm privy to it as well. I'm just kind of being like, man, we're all little kings, aren't we? Let's move to the second point. All right, the second thing is absolute.
That's so weird. I don't know. Like, again, he's coming from such a place of privilege. That is not the experience of a lot of people. That is the experience of few people. Yeah, we definitely do have a lot more day-to-day comforts today than we did centuries ago. But of course, also centuries ago for them, they had more comfort than their perspective from the past. Like that's just how our technology evolves. That's how humans are like the apex species on planet Earth. It's not because we're physically stronger than everyone else, but it's because we use technology and tools. That's how we're able to shape society, and that is what our advantage is the fact that we're able to do that.
Absolutely shocking to me, truly. And it's this: courage has died and we do not mourn her. Over all human history, courage is like this top virtue that all society over all time celebrates. Be courageous. And to call someone a coward meant they might duel you to the death. You don't call someone a coward. Now, though, something absolutely shocking has happened. Courage is no longer seemingly celebrated. Instead, we're competing to see who can be the biggest victims. Philosophically, this is called intersectionality, and basically it's saying you're not a unique individual. Instead, everyone belongs to a group, and all these groups are in contention for power.
I feel like my brain would hurt if I was just that stupid. Like, I feel like being that dumb physically has to hurt. Like, I'm sorry, bro. You literally just have literally no understanding of what intersectionality means, and you have no understanding of what is happening in our socio-political landscape. I I don't even know how to approach this. Like, he just said so many things that were so wrong all at once. No group is trying to gain power over the other. Intersectionality is about looking at other people suffering and finding togetherness in fighting against the oppressors. Like, there's no reason why we can't fight for women's rights and minority rights at the same time, right? Yes, they have different nuances in how to fix individual issues, but fighting for them together is going to better get the message across. It's going to be a more effective use of your time. It's going to be a much more effective argument when you work together with other people for a common goal. So that's what intersectionality is. It's about bringing groups who have suffered under oppression for long enough, and it's bringing them together to unite against the oppressors. I don't know what he's talking about. He's literally just delusional. I guess we have to just keep going. I don't have anything else to say. Like, he's just delusional.
If you're into intersectionality philosophy, you basically believe a
You
person's
clearly
race,
aren't.
gender, socioeconomic status, and sexuality really defines who they are as a person inside a greater group that basically...
No, but it does matter to the way in which they interact with the world around them. It just so happens that our society treats people of different races, ethnicities, genders, sexualities, and different things like that differently. We are treated differently based on those attributes of our life that we had literally zero control over. That's what happens. It's not that those things are what define you. It's not that those are the only parts that matter about you as an individual. It's not that at all. It has everything to do with the fact that those things affect the way that we interact with the world.
Sponsors that. And the more of these groups you belong to, and you're more in the minority class, that means you have greater and greater amounts of moral superiority. So for instance, if you are a Christian white male, there's a lot of those, then your opinion really isn't worth much. But if you are from a minority class of some kind, so that if you are black...
So everyone's opinion is valid in a sense that I wouldn't have a very valid opinion when it comes to quantum mechanics, because it's something that I'm not super well versed in. I don't know pretty much anything about quantum mechanics, and if you ask my opinion on the subject, I would probably give you a terrible one. And guess what? I don't have the same life experiences. This guy doesn't have the same life experiences as a woman or as a person of color. Like, he doesn't have those life experiences, so his opinions on those things is less relevant than those who have had those experiences. Yes, it is good for people who don't have those experiences to educate themselves and to develop opinions, but you don't have that. That's not what you've done. You haven't gone out and educated yourself. You're just giving yourself these opinions because you were told to have them.
Black, gay, female, trans person, now you've achieved multiple victim statuses across a lot of different groups, and so you wield supreme moral authority. Your opinion counts and mine doesn't. I'm evil, I'm oppressor, and you are good because you are minority. That's how intersectionality works. But basically, the gist of it is this: super upside down weird thing is happening. We're competing to see who can be the greatest victim. And victimhood means your opinion is worth more. Victimhood means you're morally superior. Guys,
Yeah, dude, if you are a victim of something, your opinion on it, on that particular subject, is probably more valid than somebody who hasn't experienced it at all. That is 100% true. I have no problem with saying that. I don't think that's controversial at all. And he's really making it seem like it is.
it's not race or gender or sexuality or socioeconomic class. It's not that all the rich are evil and all the poor are good. It's that everybody should be evaluated as individuals to be a good person, be a loving person, be giving, be generous. That's the stuff. What are your ideas? What are your beliefs? You don't get a token pass just because you belong to a minority group. Doesn't mean you're...
And no one's doing that. You're yelling at no one, dude. This is such a straw man. He is literally throwing punches into the air at absolutely no real argument that anyone's making. Nobody's saying that you're better because you're a victim. Nobody's saying anything like that, dude. You're delusional. You're fighting no one.
Right or wrong. Each value and belief should, and each person should be evaluated individually, not as a group. So the intersectionalists are wrong, and we shouldn't compete just to be victims. This is crazy pills. Nut.
He said people who support intersectionality are wrong because of a bunch of reasons that have absolutely nothing to do with people who support intersectionality. Cool. Good argument, buddy.
I feel crazy that I even have to say that. You know,
You
still
are
living
crazy.
Martin
You
Luther
are
King
talking
Jr.'s
crazy
dream of, he
person.
has a dream that his kids wouldn't be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character, right? But intersectionality immediately kind of like Martin Luther King Jr. Who? What? And
again, you're just
ran
wrong,
right
dude.
past what he was saying.
Straight
Our
up
thing,
just
guys,
wrong.
is we are chocolate soldiers. That's an interesting phrase, chocolate soldiers. I stole that from a dude named C.T. Studd, who was basically calling out some of his peers because they had the appearance of being courageous, but really when the slightest amount of heat was applied to them, they would melt away. I mean, you look like you're brave, but you're really not. We're chocolate soldiers. Now today, we like to imagine that we're all fierce and strong-willed and strong-minded. But listen, I wrote this. Everything is offensive now. Cat in the Hat canceled. MAGA hat.
Oh, this is so cringe. Dude, come on. Stop. Quit making bad arguments. It's less fun. I want to hear good arguments, but these are god awful. The Cat in the Hat thing, the foundation that owns the rights to those books looked at them and saw that some of them did not represent the vision that Dr. Seuss wanted, and they stopped printing them. It was also like 7 books that most people hadn't even heard of. And it's not like it was like canceled by some mob like he's going to suggest. It was them taking it down themselves, feeling the personal responsibility and trying to take responsibility and remove some of the racist rhetoric that was in some of his previous work. Dr. Seuss went on to be an avid leftist. He went on to do things for civil rights movements, and that really should be reflected in his current portfolio of work. And I think right now we better reflect that. This is just so bad.
Hats, old statues in parks, inconvenient facts of history, the number of genders, disagreement on what is healthy sexuality, the state of policing in America, guns and the Second Amendment, Karl Marx, climate change.
Dude, you're the only one who thinks Karl Marx and climate change are offensive. You're it. That's all. At this point, he's just throwing out buzzwords. He kind of lost the thought. He just kind of started rambling buzzwords. I feel like he was sitting there. It was like late at night. He's writing his little document. He's like, I'm going to get him. Let's think about what the left finds offensive. Dr. Seuss, not getting vaccinated, Karl Marx. What am I talking about? I don't know. Time to go to bed later. Like, you kind of veered off the subject there, buddy.
BLM, elections, the Kung flu, Israel, abortion, and 1,000 other triggers that send us running into our safe spaces. It appears that we're not able to.
Who's triggered by BLM? You, brother. You are. No. That's reactionaries, dude. That's people like you.
To speak openly about anything. You're at a dinner, or maybe it's a holiday with your family, and don't talk about politics, because that relative may not ever talk to you again over it. You can't talk to your neighbors about elections. You can't talk to your coworkers about firearms. You can't talk to anybody even about the weather, because climate change, right? Everyone's so easily triggered and offended. It wasn't terribly long ago, maybe in the last just generation, few decades, where it became impossible to talk about the stuff that really matters. Don't talk about money, God, or politics. It's kind of like, well, that's kind of like the most important stuff, though, of like, what does that mean? Or like, what do I just talk about the weather? And now we can't even really talk about the weather, as I said. Because
bro, is he going to keep making that joke? I think that's the third time he said that. Dude, relax. It's not that funny. Just chill out. Take a breather on that one. You can get back to that joke at a later date, maybe. How about that? I'll give you that.
Because before, you couldn't talk about what matters. Now it seems like we can't even talk about what doesn't matter. Everyone needs a safe space. We are all so...
This just reminds me of like people like Tucker Carlson with their giant megaphone and largest TV audience on a news channel saying that I'm being silenced. It's like, we can't talk about anything. Then what are you talking about, brother? What are you talking about if these are things we can't talk about? Clearly these conversations are still happening. Clearly people are still talking about these issues. Clearly policy conversations are still being had about certain issues. People are still arguing about a ton of different issues that he's talked about, especially involving like things like BLM. Like, you're nuts. You've lost it. Your marbles are all gone. You need to go look for them and pick them up, dude. You've lost all sense of reality and what's going on around you.
Pathetically weak and triggered. Just delicate little snowflakes, all of us. Everyone's just...
If anything, I feel like being triggered and getting really angry at people is exactly something that he would embrace. Like, I feel like it's the, like, testosterone manly man thing to do. Like, if somebody disrespects your wife or offends you, then you just yell at them. Like, am I wrong? I don't think I'm far off on that. I feel like that's something that people like this would support.
Made of glass, walking around, and if you just broach the subject that I'm not ready for, I'll either get angry or I'll excommunicate you. We can't just agree to disagree. That doesn't happen anymore.
Yeah, it's really hard to agree to disagree when, like, one side is like, yo, equal rights for everyone. We should all have freedom. And then the other side is like, I think that vaccines give you autism and we should put kids in cages. Like, it becomes difficult to find a middle ground or to find some point to agree to disagree or like whatever. Like, I don't know. It becomes very terrible and hard to agree to disagree when the other side is very much trying to oppress people across a spectrum of different types of people.
And so the public discourse seems to be just let down. What happened to just being able to have a disagreement with somebody over something and be like, Roger that? Do you think...
Again, people like Tucker Carlson who constantly spout white supremacist agitprop are on the largest news network in the United States. Clearly people are still listening to this dude.
One way, I think another way, and we can just agree to disagree. Remember back when we could do that? You could just disagree with somebody without wishing death upon them or calling them Hitler. That used to be a thing. You could do that. Not everyone that disagreed with you was a Nazi, but now it's immediate. You disagree? Nazi. You're a Nazi. You're racist. Everything's racist. This phone, racist.
It's so cringy, dude.
Look at this. This strip. It's all racist. Everything's racist until nothing's racist. Now when someone
That's so weird because, like, people on the right be like, oh, critical race theory, that's Marxist. BLM, that's Marxist. Oh, them is socialists. They'd be Vuvuzuela, no iPhone. Like, dude, it's the exact same thing. And you're really trying, like, you're really stretching the straw man to apply to a lot of people, but the largest voices on the right are the ones who are doing the vuvuzela, no iPhone, everything's communist Marxist. Like, those are the big talking heads. You're talking about like a minority of a minority of a minority group in the left that is like that. It really shows the differences between the two sides.
Like calls me a racist. I'm on YouTube, so I get called a racist a lot. I'm kind of like, all right, but I worship a brown Middle Eastern man as God, yet I'm still racist. All right, whatever. Now it's like a buzzing in my ear. I don't even really hear it anymore because everything and everyone's a racist until you've watered down the term where it doesn't really mean anything anymore. I'm like, no, hey, racism is real and it's awful and it's super shallow and dude, you suck if you're racist. But when everyone's all of a sudden a racist, I'm kind of like, oh, well, racist. Yeah, I get it. Everyone's a racist. And that kind of thing's happening. It's like the word is so overused, it's losing its actual potency. So
I actually kind of agree with that. I think that it is very harmful to movements like anti-racist movements when people are consistently just calling everything racist when it isn't. But also, I feel like a majority of cases there is at least some legitimacy to it, especially when it comes to like public figures, because even if it is like, let's say, a joke, you making racist jokes is still making racists think racism's okay. Like, it's still enforcing those behaviors. It's still reinforcing racism into our society.
A little bit of a tirade. We really need to move on to point
Thank God.
4. Everything is your fault.
Everything
It's not
is
my fault. If you ask me what's wrong with the world, it's the systems. It's the capitalists, or it's the president, or it's the institutions of power. You know what's wrong. It's the universe. It's the media. It's the system. It's the man. It's keeping you down. It's my boss is an idiot. It's always someone else's fault, isn't it?
It's always going to turn to something about blah 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 blah, personal responsibility, blah 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 blah, because that is how people who are in charge in capitalist nations get workers to comply. It's about, you wouldn't be poor if you were not an idiot. You wouldn't be poor if you worked harder. You wouldn't have a terrible life if you worked harder and things like that. Like, it's your fault. But in reality, these are systems that are meant to exploit you. Yeah, you do have wiggle room. You do have the ability to do things outside of that system, and you do have the access to certain things. But like, in overall, you are stuck within our capitalist system and you have to work within it. You are essentially forced into wage slavery. The vast majority of Americans are. And you don't have the freedom and to make it any better. So it is somebody else's fault. It is the capitalist class keeping the poor, working class poor, and keeping them working so that they can exploit them for profit.
I love Jordan Peterson in his 12 Rules for Life. He talks about clean up your own room, and he's basically just saying, "Hey, take responsibility for your own sphere. If you want to change."
I'm so glad he's just promoting another just absolutely god awfully brain dead human being like Jordan Peterson. That dude is also full of brain rot.
The world, make it better. You can't change the world. You can't change all the huge institutions of power, all the things that have gone awry. But you can change yourself. And if I was to come alive and be better than I am now, if I was to become a more loving man, a more generous man, a stronger man, and all the different ways that strength entails, all the people around me probably grow a little too. And in that way, that's how we change the world. It's you get better. Don't change the stuff. It is so true.
I agree. I actually do think that we should do things to better our lives, to make society better. I think it is very good for us to do personal action. I think that being politically active is very good. I want to get more involved to make society better, and I think us doing things on a personal level is helpful. But also, it's not the only thing that is going to make our society better. Even if everyone does that, it's still not enough. We do need systematic changes. We do need institutional changes to make actual, real, legitimate, and everlasting change.
That there's political corruption and there's all kinds of greed, and this world is so hopelessly broken, desperately needs some Jesus. Anyway, the world is absolutely broken, and so I won't disagree with you there, but at some point, it can't just always, all wrongs in your life can't be someone else's fault. At some point.
Yeah, dude. And if you make a blanket statement like that, of course you sound right, but that's not really, that's not anyone's thinking. No one thinks that everything wrong in their life is somebody else's fault. Like, I'm sure there are some very select few people. That's not like a broad group of people that think that.
Point we just got to own it and be like, hey, you know what, I can change me, and I'm the problem with me. My biggest problem is actually me. It's not out there, it's me. I'm my biggest problem, right?
And I'm sure in some cases that is true. I'm sure there are people who like just do the worst things to themselves to put themselves in terrible positions because of just personal choices they make. But when we look at social groups having significantly worse outcomes over entire mass averages, then we have to look at systematic changes. We have to look at the way that they interact with our institutions and our society.
So we're in the age of non-accountability. We'd rather sue somebody else, blame somebody else, complain, go all cap.
Non-accountability. Actually, I have the take that this is more accountability. The fact that people are open to lawsuit, that large corporations can be told what to do, is holding them accountable. When multiple states go after pharmaceutical companies to actually try to hold them accountable, it actually does something to stop them from doing terrible things. Obviously, it's not going to fix everything immediately, but it's trying, at least in some ways, to hold these people accountable. You should hold yourself accountable, but you should also try to hold other people accountable as well.
Lock on Facebook decrying everyone else as the villain when we're really just conveniently changing the subject so we don't have to really deal with our own stuff. Our laziness, our apathy, our cowardice, our insecurities, our frivolity when it comes to, spending maturely on a budget.
Sure, dude. Maybe in his experience, these are the problems that plague people's life. But we can look at statistical data that shows us that there are institutional problems that affect different groups differently, and that there are systems in the United States that are racist, that are sexist, that harm us in our everyday lives, and that lead to worse outcomes for certain people. You just can't deny that, but he's trying to deny it by saying that, like, personal responsibility is the fix-all, and it's really not. And I'm sure it could be for some people, but it isn't broadly.
Our inability to really invest in loving those people around us. That's the thing. We're procrastinating.
Also, one of the biggest problems I have with people just saying the personal responsibility take is the fact that offers absolutely no real solutions. When we bring up problems in our society, we should be looking for solutions on them. Usually that's where a lot of like political disagreement happens. It's not where the problem usually lies, it's where the solution is. And I think that this is just a way to bring up an issue, try to put it on somebody else, and not offer a solution. That's exactly what this is. It's just to make people think like, oh yes, you are right, that this is a problem, but then offer literally zero solution, because that's way easier than trying to actually think of one.
Procrastinators. We're lazy. We're self-centered, and at some point we need to start taking some type of accountability. These are 4 factors that are all coming together to make us the weakest generation that's ever walked the planet. We're all little kings. It's always someone else's fault. I mean, we're not taking responsibility for our own crap. We're all chocolate soldiers, and that we're just so easily offended. And we don't even really value courage as this great attribute anymore. Where's all the strong men gone? Right? How many times do we see those heroes in television shows? Where's bold masculinity? And it seems like there's no.
How often do we see those kind of heroes in television shows, bro? Have you never seen like Mission Impossible or like James Bond, like movies that are still being made today that are literally just like the male fantasy of being a badass? Like that already exists, dude. It has existed. There are so many stories that are basically the same with the exact same tropes and everything. You're just imagining this weird problem that doesn't exist.
Or room
You're making
in the
it
world
up.
for dangerous men. It doesn't seem to be a virtue that's even being put forth. But I know people out there, though it's not mainstream and it's not really in front of you anymore. I know, for my part, courage. For my part, courage is still a contagious thing. Of like, I still feel moved by the stories of heroes. You know, I want to be a more courageous man. I want to be able to stand up even when it costs me something dearly. I want to be a braver version of me. Courage hasn't died to everyone. I think it's like hibernating there. And
I hope he just tells me about some breathing techniques to be more courageous. I want this to sell me something to become more courageous. That's really how I want this video to end.
lots of propaganda and the tides of antithetical ideology is suppressing it. I think hidden in people out there is still that yearning for personal responsibility and gritty, strong will.
Hey, you actually said
and bravery and
personal
courage.
responsibility.
And to be able to stand for something greater than ourselves. I think that's still buried in our souls, and it can't be eradicated, though right now it is suppressed. And I think it's time to really just throw that off and to be able to stand tall again and recognize, hey, though culture may be getting very weak, now it's time for me to be able to put myself in positions of strength. Right? And so you just look at the four different ways and say, I don't want to be any one of those. And then we just do the opposite. Whatever you see culture doing, just do the opposite now. Everything seems...
Yeah, I'm going to go live in a dirt hut, no plumbing. I'm not going to be offended by anything. I'm just going to be a complete asshole to people. I don't give a shit if people are offended. Yeah, that sounds like a good way to live your life. I'm glad this is the prescribed way to live your life by this dude.
So evil and upside down. Whatever's happening in mainstream culture, you want to know what to do right, do the opposite. Whatever everyone's saying, say the other thing. Whatever everyone's doing, do the opposite thing. It was never like that before, right? Now everything's just super...
Yo, that's kind of like what the Unabomber said. Not saying this dude is the Unabomber, but could be.
Super evil. Everything's evil. This has been a rant of a blossoming curmudgeon. I feel like a grandpa up here.
Yeah, that was pretty boomer. I don't know. Summary, like this, such bad takes. He has literally no understanding of socioeconomic strife and obviously hasn't read any theory. Like, he didn't even know what intersectionality was. Like, and again, this video literally has almost 1 million views in about a month. Like, this channel has 1.1 million subscribers. There are a lot of people watching this stuff that probably agree with it, and it's just really terrible that people like this are able to have such a massive audience and spread such terrible messages that have really no solutions to any of the problems, but it does give you a direction to aim your hate. It does give you a direction to try to throw insults and terrible arguments at the other side. Like, it's just to aim his followers at other people. That there's no real bettering of your life. There's no real solution offered for why people feel these things. It's just society tells you to do this. Do the opposite. Be personally responsible. I don't know. Conservatives are weird, man. Conservatives are weird.